Hey there, welcome to the Solid Roots podcast, digging beneath the surface to uncover the hidden ideas that form us, the church, and the culture. I'm Brian Fisher, and this is episode 131. We are greenhousing. The last episode was all about being rested and relaxed like Jesus. I'm joined by Doc and handsome Kyle. We are back together, and it's good that we didn't push record 30 seconds ago because we were making rude and sarcastic jokes about each other. Although maybe that would have been a better start to the show, so I don't know.
Oh, yeah, real quick, I have to comment about where I was last time at this beard hair convention.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous because you both know that I get my hair cut at the Cut and Corral. So I don't know why we're making a big deal about me going to some sort of beard festival. I wish I could grow a huge long beard. That would be amazing, but I can't do that.
But you have the cool, close cut, manly stubble look going. You've had it for years.
The white stubble there.
Yeah. I mean, and for those of us folks that are listening and not watching on video, you should know that Kyle always dresses up for the show. He's worn yet another T-shirt, this time with some goofy skeleton on it. And Tim has shaved his facial hair. He looks like he's 5 years old. It's extraordinary. You have a baby face, Tim. It's very nice. It's very cute. Does your wife like it? Does she rub it like a baby's bottom?
Yeah. Rub it like a baby's bottom.
Oh,
I can't believe you said that on the air.
That's a little
Their bums
confusing.
Are so cute, and
I'm worried about this episode, like what lines we're going to cross.
Yeah, well, we're already so relaxed, it doesn't matter.
We're getting to the end of season 6, and it's
not relaxed.
All falling apart. So, well, let's, for the sake of our audience's sanity, let's head into the episode. I think this season has been really fun. It's been one of my favorite seasons. And the reason is because, first of all, I love exploring and better understanding Jesus. And I do, after 50 years in evangelicalism, I sort of get the fact that, patience and self-control and kind of like we hear the fruits of the Spirit so many times, they almost become, secondary. I've enjoyed exploring parts of Jesus that don't get a lot of press. So secure attachment and, relationally so grounded that he's free to be himself without apology, that he's nuanced, that he's puzzling. I mean, these, at least in my experience, these are not characteristics of Jesus and therefore of a deep disciple that we normally talk about. We talk about, don't murder anybody and try to be nice. That's kind of the message that we get. So I've enjoyed that. So thanks to Tim, because you wrote most of the episodes, and I think you did a great job. This is the last episode of season 6 directly on this topic. We're going to have a few bonus episodes before we head into season 7. And I felt it was really important to close with something that I personally think is elusive in modern Christianity, at least in the West. I can't speak about other countries. And that is the idea that Christians should arguably be the most calm, centered, sober-minded, relaxed, joyful people on the planet. And that, not that it has to be that way every moment of every day, but as a general demeanor, that's actually how we should be described. And I'm not sure that describes many people who are following Jesus today. At least in my world, the overwhelming majority of people who are following Jesus, I would not describe as rested and relaxed and calm and really sober-minded. And, when I read Dallas Willard's quote, that's the first thing that comes to his mind when he thinks of Jesus is relaxed, I'm thinking, is that the first thing that comes to mind when I think of myself? Or if most people that I run into, most Christians that I interact with are running around like chickens with their heads cut off, trying to, do all sorts of Christian things and take care of their kids. And they're always, stressed out and they try to squeeze in a church service here or there. So as we have done traditionally, we're going to turn this episode over to Tim, because when he doesn't write it, he's a great facilitator. So because he's had some chance to mull over it and think through it, we're going to turn it over to him. Because Tim, of the three of us, Kyle, I think you would agree, is by far the most rested and relaxed and chill of all of us. He said sarcastically.
Tim? I don't know.
Yeah.
I said sarcastically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see, Brian, I'm actually going to start us off with a compliment. You did a great job with the episode.
You're
you
so
actually,
patronizing.
you,
Why? I don't
you actually
understand.
gave me one of the best compliments. I think one of the nicest things you've ever said about me, which is when you said that I always take us to the center of the Tootsie Roll Pop.
You do.
I thought that was one of the nicest things you could have said at first. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? That owl in the commercial, he actually was a cheat. Like, he was impatient and he crunched. How many licks does it take? 1, 2, 3. Crunch. 3. So I'm not sure what exactly you're saying about me, that I'm impatient, I'm a cheat. I don't know. But
I'm always
the
our audience is always docking us because I make fun of Kyle. But then when Tim is patronizing and sarcastic with me, nobody cares. Like, is that fair?
Well, wait, I'm processing what happened here, because when I heard you say that, I took it as you were taking the time to get through the sucker to the middle. I never thought for a second it was the owl crunching, which I haven't thought about in 25 years. But yeah, I saw it as a very genuine compliment.
It was.
Thank you, Kyle. I really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. That's very
You're
kind
welcome.
of you.
Oh,
See?
I appreciate how you affirm me, Kyle.
I appreciate that you appreciate that.
You know, no
that's
one
nice. I
under
appreciate
40
your
even
appreciation.
understands the metaphor in the first place. Like, who has seen that commercial under 40 years old?
Like, what are we even talking about?
My
What
gosh.
sucker?
But the people that do get it are going to be like, "Oh, this is awesome."
Yeah.
I
I'm sure
think
that's
we
what they're
probably
thinking.
crossed that Rubicon too far anyway.
Yeah. All right, so you guys probably expect I'm going to start us off with word history or some such.
What?
But on the contrary, I'm going to start us with woodland creatures.
Ooh.
So let's talk about raccoons.
Okay,
We already talked about owls.
love it.
Right. Yeah. See, it's a pattern. So I've never directly observed this myself, but supposedly one way to capture a raccoon, were you so inclined, is to put something shiny, some kind of bauble, into a bottle. And the opening of the bottle is small enough that the raccoon can reach in, but once it has that shiny object in its paw, it can't actually pull it out. Now, the raccoon at any time can let go of the shiny object and escape, but instead, every time it will refuse to let go of its prize. It will refuse to open its paw and release, and so it just stays there, trapped in the bottle. Monkeys, I've heard, are the same way, and they can be captured by that as well. So as I was thinking about this week's episode, I think that's an interesting parallel to start with, because I want to ask you guys, how often do you think we're that way? We spot some shiny thing that we want, and we seize hold of it, and we cling to it as if that will give us security, give us safety, give us happiness, give us peace. Maybe God tells us to let go. Maybe we say no. Maybe we keep our hand clutching our prize, and God waits patiently for us to finally gain enough wisdom to relax, to release, to be restored, to let go. Personally, that's incredibly hard for me. So this episode was something that I've wrestled with. I struggle to relax, like even when I'm on vacation. I struggle to let go of wanting and chasing after or clutching onto the things that I think might give me security or safety, those shiny things that I want so badly. So I guess I want to start by just asking you guys on a personal level, how difficult is this for you? How much do you resonate with this struggle to let go of what we think will save us and simply trust and relax?
Well, first of all, I love that. I had no idea that raccoons do that. That's fascinating. My story is the thing that I grab is usually something bad for me that I think that I know is bad. So like my negative self-talk or my insecurities or feeding into this idea that I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy or I'll never measure up. That's what I cling to. And just that and it's so interesting that when you mention that, I just see that like that clutching that and refusing to let it go. For me, Jesus has been very persistently and very lovingly saying, you just relate, just relax and release that and pull your hand out and come with me to where I want you to be, where I've envisioned us being this whole time. And yeah, for me, it's very difficult.
I think I'm improving, but I think your question ties directly to sort of the underlying subject that we've been exploring this season, which is the difference between the head and the heart. So growing up and spending most of my life in evangelical Protestant churches, I mean, how many times have we heard, I surrender all, laid at the feet of Jesus? I have yet to figure out what that means. We have these Christian euphemisms that we spout all the time, but let's be honest, we don't know how to do it and what that actually means. And, I go back to, we've talked about the book before, Transformed into Fire by Judith Haugen, and she explains, I think, really simply but effectively the difference between the head and the heart. The head learns by instruction, the heart learns by experience and relationship. And so in the absence of both head and heart being on the same page, it's not true belief. So the belief that Isaiah 26:3, the steadfast of mind you will keep in perfect peace because he trusts in you. The steadfast of mind you will keep in perfect peace because he trusts in you. It's such an interesting passage because trust is not that intellectual. Trust is an experience of the heart. So rest, I would argue, is tied to trust, which is tied to surrender, which are not intellectual conclusions, that they have to be heart expressions. So over the years, my capacity, willingness to rest, to actually relax in Jesus even when things aren't going well, has never been a theological issue mentally. It's been an issue of I have not received well the overflowing delight and passion of Jesus as an experiential relationship, and therefore have struggled to rest. But in my case, where the last 5 years for our family has been difficult, and I've been upfront about this for the last, I'm now in my third year with a chronic illness. I'm weak. I don't have the capacity to do what I used to do. I can't work the crazy hours that I used to. I can't perform the way that I used to. And as much as I wouldn't wish this condition on anybody, there has been a blessing to it, which is you kind of have to surrender, right? I mean, what are you going to do? You can sit there and be frustrated and curse the day, or you can say, I'm not in a position to affect this myself. My heart does need to yield to the delight and the will and the plans and the love of God. But I think the area of exploration here is not a theological debate, is what does it mean to allow ourselves to experience the passion and love and delight and like of God. And that is actually the path to surrender.
This idea of surrender, I think, is an important one. And there's certainly a distinction between the acknowledgement of surrender or the mental assent, the approach that we view it as a one and done event, as something that happens once, perhaps at conversion, perhaps, as it's often put, surrendering to the Lord and accepting him into our heart as Lord and Savior. And this notion of ongoing experiential surrender that involves this kind of daily laying down, as I see it, of the flesh. And they can be two very different things. I'd kind of like to dig into that more, maybe from two different approaches. One being how this kind of experiential surrender might be challenged by our modern American culture, might be difficult in that context. And the other from the perspective of the Western institutional church. What is it that makes this challenging in the church to have this kind of experiential surrender? I'll talk a little bit about the first and then turn it over to you guys. So from the cultural context in America, I've thought about this before. Surrender is not popular. It's baked into our national character. I mean, going back to the American Revolution and our stories in Hollywood, Star Wars, the Rebel Alliance against the evil empire, our stories are all about the plucky individual that fights against the bigger power, the underdog, right? We always root for the underdog. This idea of revolution, of rebellion, that it's a good thing to fight against the man, to fight against the greater power. And so I think, especially here, we might struggle with the idea of letting go, with surrender. It seems like the opposite of success, the opposite of victory, the opposite of doing the right thing. Whereas, truthfully, I would say, with Christ, with God, surrender is the very thing we should be doing. He is most heroic, she is most heroic, who does lay down their arms, lay down themselves, lay down their flesh, and take up their cross and follow Christ. So I think that can be something working against us, this very idea of surrender. So now I'll turn it over to you guys. You guys can talk more about the cultural context, or what you think in the church might be working against this experiential idea of surrender.
I suspect you're right. Kyle may disagree, but in the church context, surrender, I think, almost universally alludes to conversion. Surrender your life to Jesus, right? That's one of the ways that the modern church has expressed conversion for, I don't know, 100 years. And after that, get plugged in and start doing stuff. I mean, that's the message, right? I mean, when you strip away all of the, in order to keep the institutions going, the institutions need to find converts that are going to get plugged in and become the energy for the institutions. And that means that rest is not part of that picture. You're probably going to get a message on rest as your Sabbath, so take Sundays off. But beyond that, relaxation is not a message. I'm not sure I've ever heard a sermon on the importance of being relaxed. And I had never heard that Jesus is best typified by the word relaxed until I read it in one of Willard's book, and I've read it other places since then. Mm-hmm. So no, I mean, when the point of American Christianity is to get saved and then get working, and if you're not doing all the stuff that it purports that you're supposed to do, that you're not a good Christian, which is the message. Maybe you're not even a real Christian if you don't do these things. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to rest in that. And I think the model that Jesus gives us instead is, because he is so absorbed and overtaken and delightfully, blissfully overwhelmed by the love of his Father, that the stuff that he does is just it's like breathing. It's organic. It's what you do when you are that loved by his Father. It's the right response, but obeying the commands, it's just naturally what he does, because why wouldn't he? And that's not the way we think of Jesus' commands today. We think, go out and do it, regardless of whether or not you're experiencing God's delight or not.
And I think what we're talking about really gets back to two of the key words here at Soil and Roots that we've discussed ad infinitum, which are ideas and stories, right? Ideas infinitum. Being...
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's just... you say stuff like that when you and Brian drop things like in that. I'm like, okay, yeah, man, they're just operating on such a higher level than I am. Whew,
just surrender, Kyle.
It's what?
Just surrender, Kyle.
I surrender that my intellect will never come to y'all's. So, okay.
That is not true. Big words do not big brain equal.
I don't know.
I knew that was coming.
We're just a bunch of monkeys with our hands in a jar. It's all right.
I've got two hands in a jar, so. That was good. Sorry.
I thought it was ad infinitum. I've never heard it pronounced.
I probably mispronounced it. See? This has been Vocabulary with Soil and Roots.
It's wonderful. I've learned something. I'm sure the audience has too.
I doubt it.
Maybe we should press on then.
Oh,
please.
Yeah. So two things that we have discussed endlessly here at Soil and Roots are ideas and stories, right? And the importance of both. Ideas being those unconscious assumptions that drive us, that often can go unexamined. And our stories, because so much of our own hearts and how we relate to Christ and how we relate to his story and the story of others and our story in the kingdom does depend on our past and our stories, things that we've been through, how our hearts are still tangled up in what has come before, and often anxiety about what will come, as you pointed out in the last episode, Brian. So I wonder how we might examine this from the perspective of how are our ideas about relaxation and surrender formed, and how might better understanding our own stories help us understand those things we might need to let go of, we might need to release, in order to better be centered at peace in the way that we see in Christ?
I suspect that the overwhelming majority of people, at least from our generation, and maybe most generations, function from the idea, the unconscious assumption, that our life is about performance. Because most of the American culture is based around performance. Got to get good grades in school, got to become a top athlete. The American system, for all of its benefits, rewards extraordinary talent and skill and performance far more than it does non-performance or even average performance. This is why we pay, athletes obscene amounts of money to play a game. So and that has absolutely unequivocally seeped into the church. And that idea, I think, drives against the concept of resting and relaxation. In fact, I suspect in most church communities, those are perceived as the idea of having a relaxed persona and slowing down and being more contemplative and becoming more like Jesus in that way is actually perceived as a great negative because it isn't productive in the way that the American industrial system is productive and how that has seeped into the church's idea of productivity. And I have been both subject to that, and I have absolutely propelled it forward. I mean, managing businesses and companies and ministries for the first half of my career. I mean, you have KPIs, you have metrics. I mean, you have to. You can't run a company without performance measurements, otherwise you have no idea where you're going. So it's always a very tricky balance. But in the Christian sense, I think that idea drives more spiritual exhaustion. I mean, I have close friends. They're at church 3 times a week. They don't miss anything. They're at every function. They're at every banquet. They're at every service opportunity. To be honest, they don't want to be there. They feel obligated, or they want to have some sort of reputation or an image. They desperately need to be seen as the super Christian, whatever. But if they were to actually look at their hearts, they would find a lot of exhaustion and probably exhausting their families because their idea is, regardless of their theological belief, I have to perform for Jesus. That's how I earn his love.
Do we even know what does it mean to rest or relax? The first thing that I thought of that popped into my head was idle hands or the devil's workshop. Right. I mean, that's what I've heard. And I mean, it's a great little throwaway line in the show Wings that for 5 people that'll get that reference. But again, it's that understanding of sloth, right? Like that's one of the horrible, deadly sins. You cannot relax. You can't rest because when you do that, that's when the enemy comes in and that's when he corrupts you and you've got to be kept busy and all this stuff. I can tell you at 49, this is the most relaxed I have ever been. And it's not due to the fact that I am not busy. God is putting a lot of things on my plate, and there's no way I could have handled all of the stuff that's going on right now. And I know it's because I have a deeper intimacy with God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. And I'm not saying I'm some other different plane. I think this is what is designed for everyone. And it doesn't mean that I'm just laying around doing nothing. I'm actually, like I said, busier than I've ever been, but I'm able to handle it and deal with it and actually, dare I say, enjoy some of it because I know that I'm partnering with him in it. And you can say that all day long. I remember sitting in church hearing about people that would say stuff like that going, that's ridiculous. Yeah, it's nice for you. You've got cars and money and all this stuff. Sure, you can rest in Jesus now because you've got all of that. And I'm learning that he does that when he starts stripping these things away and we start releasing and letting go of these things. He provides that kind of peace and rest that you can't have if you keep striving after all of these other things. If you're trying to tick off boxes and trying to check off a list, it's not going to happen. He does it in a way that doesn't make sense. And it creates this sense of purpose. And I'm experiencing reservoirs of strength and confidence that I never even knew were there because he's guiding me down that path of rest and release in him.
It does help that you're super handsome. I mean, the reality is that those of us that aren't,
I don't understand why that
more struggles. Well, the fact that you don't understand, I can't help you. We have bigger brains, so. David Benner wrote an amazing series of books. The first, he wrote a trilogy, the first of which is called Surrender to Love, and he deals extensively with this topic. And as usual, I read the book after I wrote the podcast. Otherwise, it would have been a better episode. But I think this is instructive. He has a section called Choosing to Obey. He says, for many Christians, obedience is more familiar than surrender. The Bible never ever uses the term surrender apart from a military context, while it repeatedly encourages obedience. Not surprisingly, therefore, sermons and pop Christian writing typically also focus on obedience. By contrasting obedience and surrender, I don't want to put too much distance between them. Those who surrender obey, but not all who obey surrender. It's quite easy to obey God for the wrong reasons. What God desires is submission of our heart and will, not simply compliance in our behavior. Trust and obey sums up the understanding of the Christian life of people who focus on obedience as an act of the will rather than a surrender of the heart. It suggests all we have to do is believe certain things about God and then get on with doing what God asks. And then he says there's two problems with this. The first is that doing what God asks is, of course, not something we can ever achieve ourselves. Not only did God never mean for us to do so, he intended that our failures in obedience lead us to surrender. The second problem in simply trying to do what God asks is that it leaves the kingdom of self intact. I mean, in control, and my willful ways of running my life remain unchallenged. But it's important that before he says that, he writes, because the whole book is about transformation of the heart, but genuinely encountering love is not the same as inviting Jesus into your heart, joining or attending a church, or doing what Jesus commands. It is the experience of love that is transformational. You simply cannot bask in divine love and not be affected. So he's creating an order here, which I think modern Christianity has backwards. Trust and obey is what the modern Christian, I just need to trust in Jesus and then go do what he says. What Benner's point is, it starts with experiencing the relational secure attachment with Jesus's delight and passion in us at a heart level. And from that, we surrender because we're already secure in Christ experientially to know that whatever that means, it's going to be okay. And then obedience is a natural, organic, delightful, joyful process. Willard makes this point, but for somebody who experiences Jesus' delight as a normative standard of life, obedience is just like, well, of course. And sin is like, why would I do that? We're not, the temptation becomes, I mean, I don't believe in perfectionism, but the sinning becomes so unattractive because we're so in love with Jesus that why would you even bother? It's a very different perspective than don't do that. Stop doing that because you're not supposed to do that. You see what I'm saying? So I think getting the order right is essential. And that means that the Christian life, I'm not sure how you would argue against this, is primarily about accepting Jesus' invitation to experience him. And from that, all these other things flow versus get your ticket to heaven, then go do stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. It makes me think of the need for recognition of God in all things. You know, Kyle, you were talking about how you felt that you've been able to be more at peace and more relaxed and more surrendered, even in the midst of challenging things. And I think too often, if I think I need to be more relaxed, I might view it as something else to do. Something like as if what I really need to do is make sure I've carved out 15 minutes per day in the hammock in the backyard, which means first I need to go buy another hammock. As if relaxing is something I need to add to my list of things to check off, things to do, right? Rather than adding it to the qualities that I need to strive to be. And that's experiential. That happens through that daily experience of God and walking with him closely. You know, Brian, as you were discussing, it's not about making sure that I'm doing the right things, but rather, am I resting in him? And am I walking in that closeness, that intimacy with the Father, where it does come back to trust. But that trust is built through relationship. That trust is not a mere mental assent. I was reading about Paul the other day, and I think it's in Acts, where he's been shipwrecked, and they wash up on the beach, and they're building a fire, and this deadly viper comes out of the fire and fastens onto Paul's arm and bites him. And the way that the story is related, like he just, I don't get the feeling that he even like broke his train of thought. Like I picture him being like, okay, guys, so if we really want to build up this fire, what we want to do is, oh, hang on, snake on my arm. What we really want to do is put these logs lengthways, that it's really gonna burn well. And everybody around him is like, because he just got bit by a deadly snake. But Paul, it seems like he knows that God has his back. He trusts so implicitly. He's walked with him through so much by this point that the snake is just no big deal. He doesn't have to worry about it. He shakes it off into the fire and he keeps going. And that just baffles me because I'm so far from that. And yet my heart longs for that. I yearn for that kind of closeness where it doesn't matter what happens to me throughout the day. It doesn't matter what is going on in my life. I can trust and rest and relax into that. It's a powerful shift, I think, in how we see the world and see ourselves. And I guess one other thing that I wanted to talk about that I think was powerful that you brought up in the last episode, Brian, is this idea that when we're resting in God and we're learning to relax and be at peace and centered in the way that we see modeled in Christ, it would be easy to think that only our time spent in the typical official Christian rituals such as prayer or time in the Word or at church count as time resting in God. But you made the point that often God is speaking to us through other things in our lives, through the mundane, through the everyday. It might be through friends that are there and present for us. It might be through nature, God's second book. It might be through a song that comes on the radio or something that we read or any number of things, an interaction with our children or our spouses. And so I think it's important really to note that there's, we've talked before about this misperception of a divide between the secular and the sacred, as if everything in the world around us is one sphere, and as if the spiritual religious sphere is another and is confined to these few things. But the reality is that God is in all things and through all things, and God created this world that we live in. God created the people around us. And so I just wanted to bring that up to see if either of you had anything else to say about that, as far as the importance of experiencing God and learning to rest in Him in the everyday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're moving out of the typical evangelical circles here. The evangelical world typically says the most important thing is that we have the correct belief system. And I'm not arguing against correct belief systems. What I am saying, though, is what we have explored here is essentially the most important thing is falling more and more in love with Jesus and experiencing that love from Him. Mm-hmm. The secure attachment that we see in Jesus, His relational stability, His emotional attunement, his words, His obedience, His sacrifices, they're all tied to the fact that He and the Father are one. So I might argue that the point of the Christian, the only place that eternal life is defined in the scriptures is John 15:7. This is eternal life, that they may know you, the one true God, and Jesus Christ whom you have sent. In Bible language, the word know is usually, it's referred to the sexual union. It's the most intimate sort of experiential relationship. Now, he's not using it sexually there, but the intonation of the word is deep, close intimacy. So the question then becomes, how do we accept Jesus' invitation to experience that sort of relational intimacy, especially when we can't see God, right? And this is where I get a little bit frustrated, and maybe my frustration is unfounded. I suffer from a divine discontent, but I think the primary way that we experience Jesus' overflowing passion and love for us at the heart level is through people. So, yes, we can experience Him through our Bible reading. That's usually individualized, let's be honest. We certainly can experience Him through prayer. That's typically individualized. We can experience Him in a worship service. That's typically non-participatory. I think the most radically close, committed communities on the planet should be Christian communities. And I think we've ended up, at least in the West, doing the opposite. So God in nature, yep. God in a song, yep. God in a program or a movie, yep. All that stuff is absolutely true. It's all good. But if C.S. Lewis said the primary way that God works on us, the primary way, it's not the Bible, it's not a church service, it's people. So if we are not intentionally inviting others into our lives who are reflecting Jesus or who we can reflect Jesus to, I'm not sure how easy it's going to be to experience this intimacy. The church, the body of people, is God's primary way of bringing the kingdom on earth. Yes, through the preaching of the word, but by being a body of people. And I just think we have lost, at least in this area where the three of us are, we have completely lost the idea of committed, long-term, sacrificial, loving communities. And that's one of the key drivers of why there's a lack of deep disciples. So I think that's where we need to focus our time. How do we rebuild small, intimate communities that reflect Jesus' love to each other and therefore reflect it outwards? And that goes beyond street evangelism, or preaching, listen to a sermon, whatever. It's far more experiential and relational.
I'm seeing God everywhere. I can experience him I was experiencing him in movies my whole life, and I never really knew that. He speaks to me through that specifically. But in nature, yes. And it can be anything, building Lego or doing a puzzle or whatever. All of this. And I think that he does absolutely speak to us through people, and we need that. He designed us for community. He didn't put Adam in the garden by himself. He created people and to fill the earth. That's what he wanted after the flood. He didn't just say, okay, well, you guys are it. Nope. Let's fill the earth. And so he definitely wants us to be part of community. And I think where the struggle is finding the right people in that community, because I know we've all been burned with stuff like that. We've searched and yearned to find that kind of community, and we thought we might have had it, and then it fell apart, or somebody did something that was contrary to what we thought or expected, and it fizzled. And so maintaining that expectancy for genuine community and being appreciative of it when you have it. That's why you guys are so special to me, is because I know that there are people in my life that God has brought that are going to be there. They're going to be there no matter what.
Do you think that the modern church has any expectation of what you've just described?
No, because it takes too much time. It's
too messy.
Yeah, you can't formalize it. You can't package it. So yeah, you can do it for 6 months, but then after that you move on to something else. We've talked about how some of the programs are designed. It's like, no, you're only there for a certain amount of time and then you move on.
Because you have to go do.
Right, exactly.
Instead of who are you becoming?
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, great discussion. Tim, thanks for leading it. It's wonderful as always. Good to have you back in the driver's seat. Thanks for taking over.
Well done, gentlemen.
Thanks for letting us opine. And thanks to you for being with us. This has been a mildly zany show, but we've done this 131 times, and at some point you start losing your sanity and start showing who you really are, even to the folks in the public.
Warts and all.
A
little too relaxed.
No,
never.
I will say, as we conclude, I do believe that is actually God's design for us, that our general state of being is resting and relaxing in the security of his love, and that is experiential, not just intellectual. And I think that is a crucial area for the Christian church to begin to explore. That we could certainly use some more time and attention there. But thanks again for being with us. If you want more information on Soil and Roots, you can check us out at soilandroots.org. That's soilandroots.org. I will mention that if you tried to fill out one of our forms, we had a technical issue and it took us a while to receive them. We normally would respond in less than 24 hours to anybody who reaches out to us. If you were one of those folks who submitted a form and didn't hear from us, it wasn't because we don't care about you, it's because we actually didn't know you reached out to us. So the issue has been fixed. So if you want to reach out to us using one of our contact forms on the site, you can do that. It's now working. You can always email us directly just at fish@soilandroots.org. That's been working fine. And frankly, that might be the better way to communicate with us right now. We are a volunteer ministry on a shoestring budget, and so things don't always work the way that we would like. And we apologize if we've caused you any inconvenience. If you want to follow us on social media, you can catch us at Facebook and Instagram at Soil and Roots Podcast, Soil and Roots Podcast on YouTube and Substack. It's just Soil and Roots. We push Substack. We talk about it because that's more long-form writing, and I do quite a bit of writing over there and expand on some of the things that we explore here on the podcast. And they're not on the same subject at the same time. So if you really love the idea of exploring our ideas and deep discipleship, just another way to explore that with us. So you just search for Soil and Roots at Substack. We are a donor-funded organization. If you'd like to financially support us, you can do so safely and securely at soilandroots.org. This episode was produced by Zach Fisher. He also provides the music. You can find him on Spotify at FishU. Thanks again for being with us, and we'll see you next time. I actually wish I'd never discovered that the word was studio. It would have made me feel better about myself. Hey there, welcome. We're off to a bad start.
Tim.
Just affirm me, Tim. Could you just give me one compliment?
Love
one time.
me, please.
Just say
Love
something
me.
nice.
You are a stud, Brian Fisher.
Man, I'm fishing for compliments and my bait's dry with you. Kyle, like he's every 30 seconds with you. It's like, well, if I'm feeling up to it today, I might give you a compliment about your hair.
But then when you get one, it's like, oh my gosh.
Not really, no.
This is amazing.
Now it just seems patronizing. Like, forget it. Just a grouch.
So cynical.
You need to grow your hair back.
I'll think about it.
Yeah.